Good morning. Today is Sunday, March 16th, 2025. A significant part of my work as a rabbi is visiting people in hospitals. And that has been throughout my career. Plus, in the past few years, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals for myself and for family members. Baruch Hashem, thank God, I am well. My family is well, thank God. Most of my experience in hospitals has been here in Montreal and in Israel. And though, of course, there are many differences, there is a commonality that is deeply enlightening that I'd like to share with you this morning. Because in Montreal and Israel especially, when you look at the name tags of the doctor or the nurse or the technician or the orderly, you see people of every religion and no religion, every skin color, every societal and ethnic background, and everyone, with very few exceptions, is joined by a single common goal: to help you, to make you feel better. How is it that we are able to give to and accept from significant help from everyone and to everyone in a hospital, which in other fora we're divided and we're suspicious? And sometimes we may even be filled with acrimony for a person who is very different from us. How is it that in a hospital it's so different, and it's striking how different it is? And the same commonality is evident in a hospital, in the surgery family waiting room. I'm praying my way for my loved one. He's praying his way for his loved one. She does not pray. But there is a bond between us in that surgery family waiting room. There is a bond of all the family members that are there. We help each other. Even when in a different place, we might never speak to each other. But here in this room, in this waiting room, in this room where a loved one is facing life, we hope, or God forbid, death, we share the joy of each other's successes, triumphs, and we feel the pain of another's loss. Complete strangers. We get each other coffee. We relay messages. We share our food. How is it that we're able to get along so well in such fraught circumstances? And the answer is simple and profound. Because for most people, excluding a relatively small number of extremists, but for most people, regardless of our religion, our culture, our language, our skin color, regardless of any of that, we all want the same thing. We want our loved one to live. We want our loved one to be healthy. We want to love and to be loved. We want safety. We want to be respected and treated fairly. We want to live a normal life where our children and our grandchildren can grow up healthy and happy and secure. We all want that. And when we are in a place where we are facing death and pain and loss, then all the minor things, the petty arguments and division and stereotypes, they're just that. They're petty. And they're irrelevant. And here's the lesson. That a hospital is such an oasis of shared humanity and commonality and caring for each other, but it doesn't have to be the only oasis. If in our daily lives, wherever we are, and again, yes, there are a small number of extremists. I'm not discussing those extreme dramatic cases. But in general, when we see someone we don't know, it could be in a store, it could be in the street, it could be in any interaction, and that person is very different from us, and maybe our immediate reflex is to ignore that person or even to recoil from that person, which we assume they are assuming, we assume that they're feeling the same thing for us. Try this. Picture yourself and this person, and the two of you are sitting in the hospital family waiting room while a loved one is in surgery. And I'm talking about a serious surgery. I'm talking about open heart surgery. I'm talking about a brain tumor. I'm talking serious. And you and this person are in the waiting room. And each of you are fearing hearing the worst news about a loved one. And you're doing whatever it is your thing to do to help that happen to be a good outcome. Imagine yourself and this person sitting together in that room and offer to get them a cup of coffee. The surgical family waiting room, the ICU family room in a hospital is an oasis. And it also holds the key to transforming the world, if we let it. Allow me to add a second theme, a second point. Sometimes, a loved one in a hospital passes away. Nebuch, God forbid. Baruch Hashem, again, my family is okay, and we're all doing all right. But sometimes a person passes away. And then we, the survivor, let's say we're not the mourner ourselves, God forbid, but we, the family, the friends, we confront the task of comforting and consoling. And some of us do this very well. And some of us, others of us, leave the mourner feeling even worse than they did before we started speaking. And the truth is, there are many forms of loss. There's, of course, the loss of life. I'm just using this as an example. But there's the loss of health. there's the loss of a job, there's a loss of relationship, and of course, each of these losses is unique, but there are features that are common to all of them. So when I speak about a mourner, comforting a mourner, I'm talking about the kind of comforting that every one of us inevitably will do throughout life for friends who have suffered a loss of a relationship or a job or a setback or whatever it is. This is common. This is universal. And one of those common universal features is how we try to comfort and console someone who is suffering a loss. So I am grateful to my colleague, Rabbi Avi Billet. I'm sorry. Rabbi Avi Billet. I'm sorry. I did the wrong pronunciation. His name is Avi Billet. A wonderful rabbi. And I heard him speak recently, and he reminded me of this passage in the Mishnah, an incredible passage of our rabbis that is so sensitive and teaches so many lessons in this specific subject. And so I'd like to go through this passage with you and point out some of the lessons of how to comfort and console in a way that's helpful. This is from the Mishnah in Avos, the part that's called Avos to Rabbi Nosson. Kishameis benosha Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, sometimes known by his acronym Rashbi, one of the most important scholars in the Talmud. Nebuch, his son, died. It's a loss that I can't even comprehend. But we know people who have suffered this great loss. Nichnesu talmidav lenachamo. His students came to visit him, to comfort him. So lesson number one, the most important comfort and consoling you will do is to show up. Is to be there, to comfort by your presence, to comfort by your support. And people often wonder, I'm not sure what to say, what should I say? All of that doesn't matter. Just being there is the greatest comfort. Lesson number one. Lesson number two. I'm just going to continue reading from this passage. Nichnas Rabbi Eliezer V'yashav lefanav v'amar le. Rabbi Eliezer, another great scholar in the Talmud. He came in and he sat next to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. I'm sorry. My mind is a little bit. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is not Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. It's not Rashbi. I'm sorry, I meant to say it's not Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the greatest leader of the Jewish people during the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. He's the one that arranged that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, but still the Jewish people would survive. I'm sorry, I was a little... You'll excuse me. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, his son, died. So Rabbi Eliezer Nichnas, Rabbi Eliezer v'yashav lefanav. Rabbi Eliezer came in and sat before him. V'amar le, Rebbe, Ritzoncha amar davar echad lefanecha. So, two lessons here. The first thing Rabbi Eliezer did is he came in and he sat down and he was quiet. And that's the first lesson. If you're coming in to console someone, and again, I'm using the example of, God forbid, a mourner, but it's all losses. The first thing to do is you come in, you sit down, you are consoling by your presence, and you let the sufferer be the first to speak, to lead the conversation. So he asked, Rebbe, my master, Ritzoncha Omar Davar Echa Levanecha, may I be permitted to say something to you? And this is so important. Establish that at this moment the person wants to be comforted. Because there are times when a person does not want to be comforted. Our sages tell us, between the time that a loved one passes away and the funeral and the burial, it's not the time to comfort. It's too raw. It's too painful. Wait until the Shiva. Wait until some time has gone by. I read something incredible recently, and it's so important because I see this happening, and it's not helpful. So I saw this in a post written by Rachel Poland Goldberg. We've spoken about her so many times. And of course, she suffered the ultimate loss when her son, Hirsch, was murdered this summer. So it happened just a couple of months ago. And she wrote that she and her daughters, they have two daughters, she and her daughters were walking down the street in Jerusalem. And of course, everybody recognizes her. I mean, probably every Jew in the world and many others would recognize her. And she says it happens, it's a few months and they're trying, and they'll never get over the loss and the trauma and the horror, but they're trying to get back to normal life. Remember that phrase I quoted for you all those months ago, we will dance again. So she's enjoying, it's a beautiful day in Jerusalem. She's walking down the street with her daughters. They're maybe, doing some shopping or something. And she says, inevitably, someone will recognize her, and they'll come up to her, and they'll just start crying. Because what else could you do? If you see someone like Rachel Poland Goldberg, you just start crying. And Rachel writes that she knows that people mean well. But she says, but at that moment, I was trying to find a little bit of normal life with my daughters. And you didn't comfort me. You just pulled me back to that dark place. And she says, I realize that you and I, an onlooker, we have a need to express our emotion and what she means to us. And we've spoken about her so many times and the strength that she gives us, but what she's gone through. So we have a need to do that. But she says, please, I know you mean well, but please, if you see me and my daughters and we're walking in a normal way, please don't bring us down. And this is so important. Because what this line in the Talmud is teaching us, and what Rachel Poland Goldberg is teaching us, is that the purpose of comforting and consoling is not for you, the comforter. It's not for you to express your emotions. It's not for you to come up and to say how terrible you feel and your life is so upset and you're so worried. That's not what the person needs to hear. That's not helping the person. You're doing it for yourself. Comforting, it's not about you. It's not about what you've suffered. It's not about what you're going through. It's not. It's what the person is going through. And sometimes the person does not want to speak about it. And we need to respect that. Focus on the mourner. Focus on the person that had the loss, not on yourself. Okay, but in this case, he asked, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Amar lo emor. Yes, say what you want to say. Amar lo, Rabbi Eliezer said to him, and we're talking about the greatest scholars and sages and the most intelligent, sensitive people you could imagine. Amar lo, he said to him, Adam Arishon hayilo ben umes. Adam, the first man, and Eve, the first woman, they had a son, and he died. He was killed, murdered. Cain killed Hevel, his brother. V'kibo olav tanchumim. And Adam was able to be consoled from his loss. Uminayin shekibo olav tanchumim. And how do we know that Adam was able to be comforted after the death of his son? Shenamar, because the Torah says, Vayeda Adam od es ishto. Adam and Chava had another child. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer is saying to him, you should be comforted because you'll get over it. Maybe you'll have another child. It's not so bad. It's not helpful. Amar lo, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to this person, Rabbi Eliezer, Lo dai li shani mitzdar ba'atzmi. It's not enough that I already felt terrible pain because of what happened to my son, the death of my son. El hiskarta li tzaro shel adam harishon. But you just reminded me that somebody else suffered. You just reminded me that somebody else suffered a terrible, terrible loss. You made me feel worse, not better. Don't tell me someone else suffered and they got over it. It doesn't help me. Don't tell me I can get another child. I can get another job. I can find another relationship. That doesn't help me. Nichnas Rabbi Yeshua v'amar lo Ritzoncha omer davar echa lefanecha. Rabbi Yeshua came in. Another great say, and these were not. They were students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, but they were great intellectual giants and spiritual giants and emotional giants. Rabbi Yeshua said, "Could I say something to you, Rebbe?" Amar lo amor. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Yes, you can speak." Amar lo, he said to him. This is what Yeshua said to him to comfort Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Eov, Job. Hayilu banim ubanos umesu kulam biyom echad. He had many sons and daughters, and Job's children all died on the same day. V'kiba aleim tanchumim, and Job was able to be comforted from his loss. Afata kibel tanchumim, you shall also be comforted, knowing that Job suffered the death of his sons and daughters on one day. Uminayin shekibel Eov tanchumim. How do we know that Eov was comforted? Shenemar, because Eov was able to say the famous words, which we say at every funeral: Hashem nasan, God has given; v'Hashem lakach, and God has taken away. Yehi shem Hashem mevarach, the name of God should be blessed. Eov was able to say that. Rabbi Yeshua says to his Rebbe, you have to be comforted from your loss because Eov had it worse. And if Eov was able to be comforted from an even worse loss, you should be able to be comforted from just the death of one child. More commonly, a person will say, I had it worse. My illness was worse than yours, and I got better. My relationship was worse than yours, and I got over it, so why can't you get over it? It's not helpful, because each person's loss is unique. There's no competition among trauma and loss and tragedy. And the second thing is, don't tell a person, if you're trying to comfort them, don't tell a person to bless God. It's not helpful. When a person is ready to bless God, they'll bless God. Don't tell them to bless God. If they want to be angry, let them be angry. I experienced a situation recently where a person was in a very difficult health situation, and they did a test and they found out that it was worse than they thought. It was significantly worse than they thought. But it was a miracle, because the person didn't know they had this other worse problem. And now that they were going to fix problem A, they're going to be able to fix problem B, and they wouldn't have known about problem B. And that could have been life-threatening. So the truth is, it's a miracle. But I would never say that to the person. In time, the person will come to realize it themselves. Don't tell a person to bless God. Finally, I'm sorry, Amalo. So Yochanan ben Zakkai answered him, L'daili shani mitzar ba'atzmi. It's not enough that I'm suffering the terrible trauma and loss of the death of my son. Ela she'izkarta li tzaro shel Eov. Now you just made me feel worse. You made me feel worse. Nichnas Rabbi Elazar ben Erech. Please listen carefully, because this is how it's done. V'yashav lefanav v'amar lo em shelecha mashal l'ma davar doma. He said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, I want to give you a metaphor to help put into context what it is that you're going through. La'adam, your situation is compared to a person shehifkid etzlo hamelech pikadon. Could you imagine if the king, the sovereign, has something very, very valuable, and they come over to you and they say, I want you, the king, I want you to watch this for me. I want to put it in your possession so that you protect it and watch it for me until I want it back. That's called a pikadon. If I give something to another person and I tell them it's not for you to use, it's for you to watch, it's in your possession to protect and watch and then give it back to me when I want. That's a legal concept of pikadon. Can you imagine if it's the melech, the king, who gives you a pikadon? First of all, you'd be so nervous that maybe something would happen to it. B'chayom v'yom, bochev et soek v'amar oili emasai eitzei min hapikadon hazeh b'shalom. Woe is to me every day that you still hold on to this pikadon for the king. Woe is to me what will happen if the day that he comes back for it, it's injured, it's damaged, it's lost. I don't want this responsibility. It's too much responsibility for me. Afata Rebbe. You too, Rebbe Shema Yochai. Hayelecha ben. You had a son that was given to you by the king, by God. Kara Torah, Mikra, Neviim, Ksuvim, Mishnah, Halachos, Vagados. He studied. He learned every area of Torah. He led a righteous and pure life. He did mitzvos. V'niftar min ha'olam, and he left this world below chet, without any sin. V'yesh l'kabel alecha tanchumim, and you should be comforted. Shehachzarta pikdoncha shalem, that you returned this pikadon that was put into your possession, you returned it whole and pure and unblemished. Amar lo Rabbi Elazar b'ni, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, my son, Nichamtani, you have comforted me. Kederach shebnei Adam menachamim. That's the way that people should comfort others. What's the key? What's the essence? The first thing is that Rabbi Elazar did not, he acknowledged the pain. He didn't try to diminish the pain. Oh, someone else had it worse. Someone else did the same thing. No. You acknowledge the pain. He didn't talk about his own pain. He was focused on his Rebbe. He didn't deflect or belittle the pain that his Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan, was going through. He acknowledged it, and he added the blessing alongside it. I hope, Rebbe, that you will be able to see alongside, side by side, with the pain that you're feeling, that you'll be able to recognize the blessing that also is there, and neither cancels the other. They will both stand side by side. Neither cancels the other, but they're both there. And Rebbe, he says, please be assured, you did your best. You did your job. Your job was to take this child that had been entrusted to you and do the best that you could during the time that you were given, and you did that. He led a pure life. He led a life of Torah and mitzvos, and he returned to his Maker pure and unblemished. You did your job as well as you could have done it. May we never have occasion to need to know how to do this. But it is inevitable that we will. So let's try to do it right, to help, to comfort, and not, God forbid, to cause even more pain. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.